The story of Ruth. Elimelech and his wife Naomi had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and lived in the town of Bethlehem in Judah. When the area was hit with famine, they decided to leave to find food. They traveled to the nearby land of Moab and settled there to live. The Moabite people did not worship God but their own idols. Some time later Elimelech died. The 2 sons grew up and married local Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. Sadly, tragedy struck again. 10 years after the 2 sons had settled in Moab, Mahlon and Chilion both died. It left 3 widows, Naomi and her 2 young Moabite daughter-in-laws, Ruth and Orpah. When Naomi heard that the Lord had provided food for the people back in Bethlehem, she decided to return. The 3 widows packed up their belongings. Naomi then told her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go back to your own mother's homes. May the Lord show you the same kindness you have shown to your dead husbands and to me. May God help you find new husbands." Naomi kissed them both goodbye and they wept aloud. "We will go back with you to your people," they replied. "No, you must return home," Naomi insisted. "You can marry again." Naomi felt embittered and that God was against her. Orpah and Ruth wept again. Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye and returned home to her mother's house. Ruth, however, clung hold of Naomi and would not let go. "Orpah has returned to her people and their gods," said Naomi. "Go back with her." "Don't urge me to leave you," Ruth replied. "Where you go I will go, where you stay I will stay. Your people will be my people and your God will be my God. Where you die I will die." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to stay with her, they both set off on the road to Bethlehem. They arrived back in Bethlehem just as the barley harvest was beginning. Their arrival caused quite a stir. Naomi's grief and suffering had changed her appearance so much that many did not recognize her. "Can this be Naomi?" people asked. "Don't call me Naomi," she insisted. "Call me Mara, because God has made my life bitter. I went away full but the Lord has brought me back empty. The Lord has brought misfortune on me." After Naomi and Ruth arrive in Bethlehem, they needed food. "Let me go into the barley fields to pick up the leftover grain." The poor were allowed to pick up grain that the harvesters had left on the ground. "Go ahead, my daughter," Naomi replied. Ruth went into the fields belonging to Boaz. Boaz was a relative of Naomi's dead husband Elimelech. Later Boaz arrived and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." The harvesters replied, "The Lord bless you." Boaz noticed Ruth collecting grain with the poor. "Who is that woman?" he asked the man in charge of the harvesting. "She is the Moabite who returned with Naomi," he answered. "She asked permission to pick up grain and has been working hard." Boaz went across to Ruth. "Stay in these fields with the women who work for me," he said. "I told the men not to lay a hand on you. When you get thirsty, help yourself to the water jars the men have filled." Ruth bowed down before Boaz. "Why are you treating a foreigner so kindly?" she asked. "I have been told how you have cared for Naomi," Boaz answered. "May God, under whose wings you have taken refuge, richly reward you. Even though I am lower than one of your servants, you have spoken kindly to me and put me at my ease," Ruth responded. At mealtime Boaz invited her to eat with the other harvesters. "Have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar," he said. He offered her roasted grain. Ruth ate all she wanted. When Ruth got up to continue working, Boaz gave secret orders to his men. "Let her gather among the sheaves without telling her off. Even pull out some stalks from the bundles and drop them for her to gather." Ruth busily gathered grain until the evening. Ruth threshed the barley she had gathered and took it home to Naomi. It was a large amount, about 30 pounds. She also brought Naomi the food left over from the meal she had with Boaz and the harvesters. "Where did you gather grain today?" Naomi asked. "Who is the man who has been kind to you?" "Boaz," Ruth replied. "The Lord bless him," said Naomi. "He is a close relative we know as a guardian redeemer. He has an obligation to look after a relative who is in need." From that point on, Ruth continued gathering grain in the fields belonging to Boaz. She stayed close to the other women gathering grain, knowing she would be safe. She worked hard in the barley harvest and then in the wheat harvest that followed, making sure that Naomi had enough food to eat. One day Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, you must have a future where you will be provided for. Tonight Boaz will be winnowing barley. Wash, put on perfume and dress in your best clothes." Then she told Ruth what to do next. Ruth made her way down to the threshing floor where Boaz was working, making sure she was not seen. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking, he lay down at the far end of a grain pile. Ruth crept up to him, uncovered his feet and lay down. During the night Boaz woke up to find a woman asleep at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she replied. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, as you are a guardian redeemer of my family." A guardian redeemer was someone obliged to look after a relative in need. Boaz was related to Naomi's dead husband Elimelech. "The Lord bless you," replied Boaz. "You have not run after younger men, and people know you are a woman of good character. I am your guardian redeemer, but there is another person more closely related than I am. If he is not willing to redeem you, then I will." Ruth lay at his feet until morning. Boaz filled the shawl she was wearing with grain to take back to Naomi. Boaz went to the town gate where business deals were done. When he saw the guardian redeemer, who was more closely related to Naomi's former husband, he asked him to sit down with 10 elders gathered as witnesses. "Naomi is selling the land that belonged to our relative Elimelech," Boaz explained. "You have the first right to buy it, but if you do not want to, then I will." "I cannot buy the land without causing problems with my own estate," came the reply. "You buy it as I cannot." It was the custom to seal a deal on buying property by one party taking off a sandal and giving it to the other. The guardian redeemer who had first choice on the land took off his sandal and gave it to Boaz. Boaz made an announcement to the elders and those gathered. "Today I have bought from Naomi the property of Elimelech, and his sons Mahlon and Chilion. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite as my wife. You are my witnesses." So Boaz married Ruth, and the Lord blessed them with a son. Women told Naomi, "Praise the Lord. He has looked after you in your old age. Ruth loves you and is better to you than 7 sons." Ruth and Boaz's son was called Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse, whose youngest son David became king of Israel. A descendant of David was Mary, the mother of Jesus.
If you enjoyed this video, please show your support by giving it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to Animated Bible Stories, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos.